Now that we've created a project, imported some documents, and extracted some data, let's look at how the Sysrev filters allow users to quickly identify and share sets of articles, as well as the different modes of exporting on Sysrev. We've already seen how the bar chart on the overview dashboard can be used to access filters based on content. Here are the articles that have been labeled as true for angry. As a reminder, the filters are hard-coded URLs, which means that if anyone were to access this URL, they would see the same filtered list. Returning to the dashboard, these other modules are also links to filtered lists. But let's look at a slightly more exciting project. This is a project we conducted on opioid use disorder treatments. As you can see, one of the pieces of information that I tracked was my reason for exclusion, or rather why I was not able to extract information from the document. Some simply didn't have the information, but a number simply didn't have open access free PDFs. Once again, clicking on the label takes me to a filtered list for that response. If I go back to the overview page, let's instead look at the publications that I included and extracted data. As you can see, this takes me to a different filtered list with its own dedicated URL. The filters allow users to identify and share specific subsets of articles. Let's take a look at the filter types. Source will only show articles from a given source. This project's articles all came from a single XML import, and so the list is the same. Notice that you can either match or exclude based on a given criteria. So if I exclude all of the articles from the same source, then I'm left with no articles. You can filter based on consensus, as well as individual labels, the inclusion label, or any of the labels. So these are all of the articles for which I answered the include label with the value yes. Once again, 88 articles. If I quickly hit Display Labels, I can see the types of information that I extracted mostly came down to two group labels, population outcomes and treatment outcomes. If I want to see all of the articles that had treatment outcome extracted, I can. If I want to see all the articles that had treatment outcomes and population outcomes extracted, I can do that too. Filtering on user content is much the same, except that the filter only considers which user gave label responses, and it does not actually consider the labels themselves. The last filter is machine learning. More details later, but briefly, Sysrev automatically builds predictive models for inclusion, as well as every Boolean and categorical label. These models are available for use as filters. This is a histogram depicting Sysrev's predictive model for inclusion. The farther to the right, the more confident Sysrev is that an article should be included. The green bars were manually included by a human, in this case myself, and the red bars were manually excluded. As you can see, the models did fairly well considering that they were trained on only 175 articles. I wonder what these red bars are on the right. Okay, back to filters. Let's turn off these filters and add a filter for predictions. Let's look at all the articles that Sysrev thinks had at least a 75% chance of being included. And let's say I wanted to find those red bars from the histogram. So let's intersect this with the articles that I excluded. Include me, no. So here are the 4 articles that I excluded that Sysrev thinks should be included. As we can see, 3 of the 4 simply didn't have a free PDF, and the last didn't have the information that I was seeking. Perhaps it is worth purchasing these PDFs as the models are performing fairly well. Now that we have seen the filters, let's look at the exports. The first thing to know is that the filters are applied to the exports, which can be quite handy for sharing specific sets of information. Let's say I had a colleague who had access to some journals that I did not. I could export these 4 articles via XML or CSV and send the list to them. As I remove the filters, the export numbers update accordingly. In addition to simply sharing article metadata, there are 3 answer exports. Article answers only include one set of responses per article, whether due to agreement or by relying on conflict resolution. User answers includes every label response by every user, including conflicts and resolutions. Annotation export is the same as users export, but includes annotation labels, which require a special format. One final note is that the group labels also require special export. If I go to Manage, Export, I can see the same export options plus 2 more group label specific exports. As a reminder, a group label allows for tabular extraction. That means you are extracting multiple tables of information across multiple documents. A simple spreadsheet is unable to capture all of this information without becoming impractically sparse. To solve this, we offer 2 avenues. First, individual group labels can be exported as a CSV. So this export would show all of the population outcomes across the 175 articles merged into one CSV. Alternatively, you can export all of the project data in one JSON file. If you need help with manipulating JSON or help with any data manipulation, feel free to contact us. Last but not least, all project data, including group label data, can be accessed programmatically via the Sysrev API. Access to the Sysrev API is a premium feature. We have now seen how filters can be used to isolate interesting subsets of articles, and the hard-coded URLs and many modes of export allow those subsets to be easily shared.